Hello. So we are here day 3 that we're working on this. It's actually Thursday, so I'm at T-minus 15 and counting. I'd really like to get this done tonight so that I can wear it tomorrow. That is my plan. I could spend a little time on it tomorrow. The event that we're going to isn't until 8, so I could spend a little time hemming it, that sort of thing. But I don't wanna, right? I don't want to spend my time doing that. I'd rather get it all done today. But we're not gonna stress ourselves out. I do have an alternate dress I can wear if I need to. So I made a mock-up out of this brown, and I'm pretty happy with it. So this is gonna end up being my lining. I ended up being a little bit short on the sides, but I'm just gonna add that to the back and it'll be fine. If not, I can always add some fabric in on the sides. I'm not that worried about it. So it's gonna be the lining. The back on the original dress has that ruching again, and that's only one layer. So I don't need any lining for the ruching layer, which thank goodness, because I didn't know how that was gonna work. And I think I'm gonna do that in this black fabric because I've got those black stripes, so there is precedent for there being black on this dress. And it's just this ruched backing. I was at first, you can see I divided this up. Maybe you can see I've got lines drawn on this pattern piece. I was gonna break this up into stripes, but then I was like, okay, the math wasn't mathing. So first of all, I want this to ruche nice and clean, and I think if I had a bunch of seams, that would interfere with that ruching. So that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is that if you look, right, so imagine in your head, so this is the center piece, and then this is the side front, and this is side back. Side front, side back, and then the only other panel would be that ruched panel in the back. So I have 6. How does the pattern work? So if I have these book matched, I can't, you start with purple and then work your way over to red, then am I going to have 2 reds next to each other, right? Like that's not going to work out. So I just decided to scrap having the back rainbow. The back's just going to be black and it will be fine and everybody will be happy. I also scrapped, let's go back to this drawing. I also scrapped this lace idea. It was 85 degrees in Michigan yesterday, my part of Michigan yesterday. I was so warm. I plan on wearing this in a couple weeks outside to an outside event. I am going to die. I'm going to die. I thought, man, if I put lace on there, that's just going to be hot. It's just gonna be another layer against my skin. And I didn't have any good brown lace. And I thought, you know what? That kind of, like those 2 things, that kind of sends it. So I'm not gonna do lace. So I instead took my pattern pieces. So this is my side front. Took my side front and my side back and I laid them next to each other and I measured out 6, and then I cut new pattern pieces from that, starting from 1, 2, 3, I ended up numbering them. So like this is number 3, here's number 2, here's number 1. And so the next thing is to sew these panels together. So these are my side front panels. And then for the front piece, I have this divided up and it kind of creates this almost like Art Deco kind of chevron, which I'm really excited about. So those are here. So again, I'm going with the inclusive flag. This is the one I'm worried about. Any of my seamstresses out there or tailors or any of my little sewing friends, I'd like your opinion because having the white, this is what I didn't want to do, is have the white right at the top of the bodice. I worry about that because my boobs are like my food catchers. You know what I mean? And like, it can be a hot mess sometimes. So yeah, that's a thing. So anyway, you get the idea. So we're going to end up with these stripes. Excited about that. So, and this will give me this kind of chevroning for the front of the bodice. And then this is the side. Boom, boom, boom. Kind of getting off the edge here. So on and so forth. And then lined with this brown fabric. So this was a lot of math. This was a lot of figuring out. I have quite the headache, but the hard part is done. Now I just have to sew it together. I'm almost out of battery life. So we'll see how much I can capture on video, but we're in this together, you and me. So I'm okay with continuing this on. So let me switch out my sewing place. I'm going with a light gray or kind of a medium gray thread because I don't want to switch out the thread in between each color. There's a lot of colors going on here and that's just too tedious. So I got this tip from the YouTube channel The Last Homely House. I can't remember the name of the lady whose channel that is, but she's super nice. If you've not seen it, she's just awesome, very creative. She does a lot of quilting and she does some garment stuff too, but she's mostly a quilter. Check her out if you can. Last Homely House. It's she's using it as a quote from The Hobbit. So she's the one that suggested using kind of a medium gray thread for sewing. She does it again with her quilts, but her theory is that it just kind of disappears inside the pattern or inside the color of the fabric. And I think she's right. It's kind of a magical color. So I'm going to try that. So we've got a curve we've got to ease into. I'm doing a consistent 1/2 inch seam allowance. There we go. Seam number 1 of several. We won't talk about how many. Green is our next color. So to preserve my phone battery, and you kind of get the idea of what I'm doing here, I am going to sew all of these panels together, and I will be right back. Okay, I've been busy. So I've got, this is the outer shell that I'm working on here, and I've got it almost done, which I'm very happy about. So this is the front chevron. Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, like a 32nd of an inch off on some of these. I decided I'm not going to sweat that. But that's my front chevron, which I think looks really cool. And then here are my side panels. They're all ironed and pieced together. So now I'm just piecing together the front and the side and side back panels. So I've got one more to go. And I thought, oh, I haven't been recording anything in a really long time. So I will go through this with you, and this has been really fun and really eye-opening, and really testing my skills. I feel like I need to spend more time quilting or something to get better at piecing those chevrons together. So I'm sure there's a technique that I just don't know that would have made that a whole lot easier, but I'm not mad about how it's turning out. So let's sew this seam together. Awesome sauce. Look at that. So that's cool, right? So I don't know. Do I want, now is the time. If I want any bits of lace in between these colors, now is the time to decide that. Or do I just want to leave the bodice kind of plain? I kind of like it plain. Isn't that funny? I didn't like the skirt plain at all. Oh, I really need to set up my dressmaker's dummy and take a look at this. All right, hold on. I'm going to think about that for just a minute. So here's where we're at. Again, the skirt is all put together. Hi, Smudge. I hear you. There's a Smudge coming. There he is. Hi, Smudge. So anyway, here we are. Everything's just pinned. That's why it looks kind of rough. But the bodice is looking pretty good. So there are going to be straps that just tie. I think that's going to be the easiest way to do that. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with how this is looking. So the next step is to, and I've got some trim there, by the way, and I like that narrow black on top. So I think I'm going to do that. I think I have enough of that trim to do it on the top. So next step is to finish the bodice and start working on the ruching and the lining. So by finishing the bodice, I mean I'm going to sew all of that trim on, and then all that narrow black trim on, and then probably the straps will be next. So that way I can sew the lining on. So that's what we'll do next. All right, we are back. So this is that little trim that I'm going to put on the bodice, and I've got a fair amount of it. I don't have a lot, but I have a decent amount. That was what I originally was thinking I wanted to put on the skirt, but it was not enough for the skirt. Nowhere near. But I think I got enough for the bodice. And I thought I would even do, because I don't like how we can see, like on the skirt, it doesn't bother me, but on the bodice, you know, this is near my face. So I thought I would put something there to cover that up. Do I want to do a strip of this and just layer, or do I want to do some bling there? What if I put some of that there? But I don't have that anywhere else. I worry that it would look weird. I can always put that on later. I can always cut a piece and hand stitch that on. So I'll think about that. I've got lots of it. It's not going anywhere. I'll think about it. I spent all this time lining this up, and I'm just going to cover it up. That's okay. It's still time well spent, because everything is lining up beautifully. And I'm not having any fitting problems or anything as of yet, so... Okay, y'all, it is like 3 in the morning or something, and I'm getting really tired. So we're going to see how this goes. But I have elastic thread. This is by Gutermann, and I've been sitting on this forever. And we are going to, when that's in the bobbin case, and then I have just my regular thread. I have the stitch length set. I can't remember if I need to mess with my tension or not. So we're going to find out. I've never done this before, so we're going to see if this works or what happens. So we are going to start. I've got a casing here for the top elastic. And you just do a straight stitch. And the idea is, nope, I need to do it upside down, because I need that bobbin thread to be facing inside. So I just need to follow my stitching here to keep it straight. Okay, see what happens. So far so good. I'm gonna go slow. It's so slow anyway. You guys don't know that because I speed it up, but I'm kind of I go slow because I have an old machine, and you know. Guys, it's doing it though. I think it's doing it. I don't have a lot of thread in the bobbin. I may have to rewind it at some point. We'll see. I don't know how much I need. I'm kind of excited. That kind of worked. Okay. Do I cut it and go the other direction? Or do I just... Yeah. Because I'm going to sew down that anyway. Let me think. I guess I could tie off each. Okay. Yeah, we'll just tie off each row. It's fine. So you just tie off your rows by pulling your top thread through to the bobbin and tying them off together. And I'll show you the magic. So this isn't the magic. This is, so we're going to do rows all the way down. I may have to finish this tomorrow. We'll see how it goes. I'd like to finish it tonight if I can. But that's it for this little segment. And we'll carry on. All right. So now we are over here at my handy little ironing space. I've got a big ironing board, a little ironing board. And then I've got this little mat right next to where I sew for little things. And I'm told that once you get this smocking done and you hit it with a steam iron, that the magic really happens. So let's find out. Let's work this down and lay it out. And let's, I think I just have to hit it with steam. So let's, ooh. Can you see it shrinking up, doing its thing? That's kind of cool. All right. Did on that end quite a bit. Let's see if it's going to do it on this end. One of the things I like about this iron, this is just a cheapy Black & Decker that I've had forever. I've dropped it several times. But for some reason, it doesn't leak. Knock on wood. And it does this unending steam really nicely. So I'm just going to make sure I hit this really good with this steam. I had to measure it before and after. See what the difference was. But I think that you can see a notable difference. Yeah, look at how nice and tight that puckering is now. Very cool. See what I mean? You like do this a couple of pumps on this iron, then it just does a continual steam setting. It's really handy for things like this. Alright, I don't see it puckering anymore. There we go. There is our smocked section for the back. I don't want to stretch it out too much. Now, on the back, you can see I had some areas where my thread broke, and I had to restart. This was my newer thread. This stuff here, and I don't know if you can see, there's a little bit of a color change. This is kind of a crew color where this is white. This was the stuff that was Gutermann brand that I bought, you know, a couple years ago, and with an idea that I would do some kind of a smocking project like this. And it gave me so much trouble. You can see it broke several times. It kept getting snagged in my machine. This stuff down here is some like weirdo. I have no idea where this came from. It was just in my kit. I probably bought it from some little lady stash in an indeterminate amount of time ago. It sewed up like a dream. Look, not one break. Not one break. It came out beautifully. So there's that, I guess. Okay, well, I feel really good about that. I'll hit the top here with a little bit more steam, just to make sure. And yeah, that's all it takes, just a couple of pumps like that, and it starts this endless steam, which I just love that feature. All right, let's go back to the sewing machine. I have my elastic cut for this top casing that I made, so I'm just gonna slip that through here on my bodkin. Let me open this up. Steamed it so it's very shut. There we go. And we're just gonna slide this on through with our bodkin until we get to the other side. And I've cut this to the length of this relaxed, so that way it will help hold the top against my skin, hopefully. We'll try it on and adjust the elastic if necessary when we're all through. So this is going to pretty much complete the bodice. Once the bodice is put together and complete, then we have to figure out what we're going to do for the skirt. If we're going to do some elastic, if so, are we going to do a casing? What does that look like? And so on and so forth. I'm just going to stitch this down here. I'm going to try to make sure to catch all these ends too with my sewing. Okay, so I have stitched down my ruched area, and then I stitched the lining down over top of that, and that took care of those edges and cleaned them up nicely. Again, I do have these few spots here. I'm not going to worry about them. That's just how the inside of this top is going to be. And if anybody wants to judge me for it, well, they can just come and remake this for me, and I will be happy. I'll happily accept that gift. So, you know. So just using my bone folder to pop these corners out. I, of course, clipped the corners so that they would be nice and crisp. Clipped them at a 45-degree angle after stitching them down so that they would pop out nicely and not be too bulky. All right, so there is the bodice. I do have to trim this down a little bit. I don't know if you can see, but it's a little long. I overestimated how long it needed to be just a little bit. Better than underestimating, I suppose. So I will just, a few loose threads here and there. But yeah, so I'll just trim that down by that 1/4 inch or whatever it is. And then we will be ready to start talking about stitching our bodice to our skirt, because the bodice is now done. The skirt is now pretty much done. They just need to be stitched together, and then the skirt needs to be hemmed. So that is it. I don't know how I'm going to break all this up. This might be all in one. I might break this up into 2 more videos. I don't know. Depends on how long it takes. But I'm going to give this some thought and decide how I'm going to handle our waistband here, what that's going to look like. So I'll be back once I make a decision. Another update. All right, so this is where we are at. I have sewn what looks like just a little ruffle at the bottom, but it's going to be the waistband. Let me turn this back right side out. So I've sewn a plain black waistband to kind of give a transition between my upper bodice and the skirt. So we'll have this little transition of this band, and then this is going to be the casing where the elastic has gone in. There's a bunch of different ways I could do it, and I've been kind of hemming and hawing on how I'm going to do it. And I think I like this. You know, I've been kind of segmenting different colored areas with black in one way or another. And so this is going to serve that purpose here. So the next thing we do is we're going to, so there's 2 layers. So we're going to stitch the skirt to 1 layer, and then this is the lining layer that will be sewn to the skirt, and that will encase our elastic. So I've got 1 side seam left open so we can feed elastic through. So our next thing to do is to stitch the skirt to our bodice. We're getting there, you guys, because once that's done, once the skirt is stitched to the bodice and that's all sewn down, then all we have to do is hem it. Like, we're really getting there. I might get done with this tonight. Kind of excited. So hold that thought.